Hey, Liam. Let me ask you something straight away. Do you remember your very first time in America? That exact moment someone looked at you and said, "How's it going?"
Hey, Emma. Oh, I definitely do. The first time I arrived in the US, I felt completely prepared until a stranger smiled at me and said, "How's it going?" I knew every single word, but my brain completely froze and I had no idea how to respond. But the good news is, if you've ever felt this way, we're going to change that today.
So, where does that very first conversation usually begin?
Most people assume it starts at immigration, but that's not always true. Sometimes your very first real interaction happens before the plane even lands.
Really? I never thought about it that way.
It happens much more often than people realize. A flight attendant might ask you a simple question, the person sitting next to you might start a casual chat, or another passenger waiting in the aisle to leave the plane might say something friendly.
Wow. So, your first real English conversation could happen before you even step foot inside the airport.
Exactly. That's why I always tell our learners something very important. Real English doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It just becomes a natural part of your day.
I think many learners expect those initial conversations to be super difficult or formal.
They usually do, but that's one of the biggest misconceptions out there. Most first conversations are incredibly simple. People aren't trying to test your English grammar, they're simply being friendly or asking for basic information.
So, the pressure mostly comes from our own expectations, right?
That's exactly right. We often imagine these complicated, dramatic situations in our heads that never actually happen in real life.
But once you finally walk off the plane and into the airport terminal, everything probably starts feeling much more real.
Oh, it certainly does. Suddenly, you're surrounded by English everywhere you look. The overhead announcements are in English, the signs are in English, and even the advertisements on the walls are in English.
I imagine that can feel a bit overwhelming at first.
It really can, especially during your first visit. Your brain is trying to process all this new information at once, and that's the exact moment why many learners suddenly lose their confidence.
Is that because everything is happening so quickly?
Absolutely. In the classroom, you always have time to think. But at a busy airport, life keeps moving whether you're ready or not.
I think that's one of the biggest differences between just studying English and actually using it in the real world.
I couldn't agree more. Classroom English prepares you for exercises, but real life prepares you for actual conversations.
So, what should learners focus on during those very first few minutes after landing?
I always tell people to focus on understanding the situation instead of trying to translate every single word. Imagine you're looking for baggage claim. Even if you don't understand the entire overhead announcement, you already know what you're trying to do. The situation itself gives your brain lots of helpful clues.
Ah, so the context becomes a major part of the conversation.
Exactly. Even native speakers rely on context all the time without even realizing it.
I think many learners carry this heavy burden that they have to understand 100% of what they hear.
And that's one of the biggest reasons people become so nervous. They mistakenly think that missing just one word means they've completely failed.
That's so true. Now, once we've finally collected our luggage, what's usually the next conversation we face?
For most travelers, it's asking for directions or figuring out your transportation to leave the airport.
And I think that's exactly where people begin worrying about making mistakes.
They definitely do, because now the conversation has a specific purpose. You need to reach your hotel, find the right train platform, or locate the rideshare pickup area.
Right, that feels much more important and stressful than just casual small talk.
It feels important, but the English phrases you need are usually incredibly simple.
So once again, learners are expecting something much harder than reality.
Exactly. Most travel conversations follow specific patterns that repeat every single day.
Something else I've noticed is that Americans often start conversations with very casual greetings.
They do, and that's something that surprises many learners. People expect formal English because they've studied formal grammar for years. Then someone smiles and says, "How's it going?" Or, "What's up?" And suddenly everything feels completely unfamiliar.
I think that's exactly the moment many learners freeze.
It happens all the time because they recognize every individual word, but they've never practiced the complete expression as one natural automatic greeting.
I feel like that's one of the biggest lessons we've learned already. Now, Liam, we've finally left the airport behind and made it into the city. I think this is the moment when many learners truly realize they're surrounded by English everywhere. Why does it suddenly feel so different?
Because everything around you is now part of the experience. You're no longer just studying English, you're living in it. Every street sign, every overhead announcement, and every casual conversation around you becomes part of your day.
I imagine that feels incredibly exciting and overwhelming at the same time.
That's exactly how most people describe it. At first, your brain tries to process absolutely everything. But after a while, you realize that's impossible, and something really interesting starts to happen.
Oh yeah? What happens?
You naturally begin focusing only on the information that actually matters to you. And that's exactly what native speakers do every single day.
So nobody is out there paying attention to every single word.
Not at all. People naturally just listen for the main idea. Once learners understand that, real-world conversations become much less stressful.
After leaving the airport, most people probably head straight to their hotel.
That's usually the next stop, and it's another situation that worries many learners much more than it should.
Why do you think hotel conversations make people nervous?
Because they imagine they'll need advanced, formal English to check in. But in reality, it's just a quick transaction. The receptionist asks a few standard questions, explains a couple of house rules, and before you know it, you're holding your room key.
I think many learners forget that hotel staff talk to international visitors every single day. They are totally used to different accents.
That's an important point. They are trained to be helpful and patient, not to judge your grammar. That alone should make people feel much more confident. Now, once we've finally checked in and dropped off our bags, I think the first thing most people do is look for something to eat.
Oh, I would absolutely do the same. After a long, tiring flight, finding a good coffee shop or a nice restaurant is usually at the very top of the list. Restaurants seem to make learners pretty nervous too, though.
They do. In restaurants, learners constantly worry that they'll misunderstand the menu, fail to catch the waiter's questions, or won't know how to order naturally.
But those conversations are probably way more predictable than people realize, right?
They really are. From the moment you walk through the door until the moment you ask for the bill, the conversation follows a very familiar pattern. Once you recognize how the conversation usually flows, everything becomes much easier.
Can you show me which type of patterns are common in these situations?
Absolutely. It all starts the second you walk through the door. The host or waiter will usually greet you and ask a standard question like, "How many in your party?" or "Just for one?" All you need to do is give a number. You can just say, "Table for two, please."
Oh, that's simple enough. But what happens once we sit down? That's when the pressure starts building up because the waiter comes over to the table.
Right, and they'll usually say, "Can I get you started with something to drink?" Or, "Are you ready to order, or do you need a few minutes?" If you need more time to look at the menu, don't panic. Just use a quick chunk like, "We need a few more minutes, please."
That is a lifesaver phrase. But okay, let's say I am ready to order my food. What is the most natural way to say it without sounding like a textbook?
This is where most learners overthink and try to make long sentences. In real life, native speakers keep it incredibly short. You just need one of two simple patterns.
Can I get the? Or, I'll have the. For example, can I get the cheeseburger, please? Or, I'll have the grilled chicken. That's literally it.
Wow. Can I get thee and I'll have thee are so simple. It takes away all the pressure of trying to build a complex sentence under stress.
Exactly. And at the end of the meal, when you're ready to leave, the pattern repeats. You don't need a long explanation. When the waiter asks if you need anything else, you just smile and say, "Just the check, please." Or, "Can we get the bill, please?"
It really is just like a script that repeats in every restaurant. Once you know the steps, you can just fill in the blanks with whatever food you want to order.
Bingo, Emma.
It's just like the city itself becomes our teacher.
That's exactly how I see it. Every restaurant, hotel, or neighborhood has something to teach you if you're just willing to observe and listen to the world around you.
After getting something to eat, I imagine many visitors spend the rest of their first day out exploring.
They usually do. And that's exactly when another interesting thing happens. Learners begin noticing that Americans often start very small conversations with complete strangers.
I've heard people say that before, but I never really knew if it was actually true.
Oh, it definitely happens. Someone might comment on the weather while waiting for the traffic light to change at a crosswalk. Another person might ask if you're visiting the city after noticing your camera, a map, or your suitcase.
Wow, so those conversations aren't planned at all.
Exactly. They just happen naturally because people are sharing the exact same moment.
And that's only the very first day. The amazing thing is realizing that every single one of those micro interactions makes the next one feel just a little bit easier, right?
Exactly. Now you understand why people say immersion works so well. It's not about locked-away study sessions. The more you're surrounded by real English, the more natural it begins to feel to your brain.
We've covered a lot of ground already, but I know there's still one major thing that many learners worry about. What happens when they completely misunderstand someone, or when a conversation just doesn't go as planned?
That's probably the single biggest fear learners have, but it's also one of the most normal situations you'll ever experience. In fact, it happens to native speakers all the time too. Sometimes people speak too fast. There's just too much background noise around you, or you simply didn't catch what they said.
I think many learners immediately blame themselves and think their English is bad.
They do, but communication isn't about catching every single syllable. Most conversations can continue perfectly well even if you miss a small detail.
That's fascinating. So just being confident in that moment probably helps a lot, right?
It really does. Being confident and relaxed changes everything. When you're nervous, your brain panics and focuses entirely on not making mistakes. But when you're relaxed, it naturally focuses on understanding the message.
Before we finish up today, could you leave everyone with one final message?
I'd love to. If you visit America, don't worry if your English is perfect. Just explore and talk to people. You only need the courage to say that first sentence. You won't remember every word you heard, but you'll never forget the conversations you were brave enough to start.
I think that is the absolute perfect takeaway. Real fluency doesn't begin when you know everything. It begins when you stop being afraid to use what you already know.
That's exactly right. Just keep speaking, keep listening, and keep saying yes to new conversations, because every single one brings you one step closer to sounding completely natural.
Before you go, we would love to hear from you down in the comments. If tomorrow were your very first day in America, which city would you visit first? And what would be the absolute first thing you'd do? Leave your answers below because we'd love to read all about your travel plans.
And if you enjoyed today's lesson, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a tip.
Yes, and now that you know exactly how to handle your first day and conquer those nerves, it's time to take the next big step.
If you look right here on the screen, you can click on our next lesson, English for the Big City. This is where we'll master the actual everyday conversations you'll hear in busy coffee shops, local stores, public transportation, and crowded city streets. It is the perfect next step to help you blend in and sound like a local.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone.
Keep exploring, keep speaking, and keep enjoying every single opportunity.
We'll see you in the next lesson. Bye!
Bye!